of information and engagement, which will get even more intense for the next 45 minutes or thereabout, when we'll have a discussion about this ugly trend about military coups as they are beginning to get the attention, not just of the sub-region ECOWAS, but Africa Union, as well as the United Nations. And it begs the question, after 20 years of the African Union's formation, what have we really learned? And I'll have a discussion shortly. But just some house cleaning to do. Many of you sent in messages around the story which ran during the Big Three, which was about the United States Embassy's limited no interview visa renewals, and had said that those of you patronizing touts you shouldn't pay a single kobo extra beyond what is the required fee. And the problem happens because people want to beat the numbers of people who have, decided to go and meet these touts, and these touts give them new dates, whereas wait in line and they won't. But this process may solve that problem. And I said you should go only to the recognized sites, which are travel.state.gov, again, travel.state.gov, ng.usembassy.gov/visas. Again, ng.usembassy.gov/visas. And the last one, ustraveldocs.com/ng. Again, ustraveldocs.com/ng. Any of these sites is legitimate, and you can stop or prevent yourself from being a victim of a scam. Right, so now to another serious matter. This is serious, but this is even more serious, what is going on here. And Hannibal Owaifo, who's the president of the African Bar Association, has just walked in, and it's great to have you join us, Hannibal.
Thank you.
Brilliant. And so, those of you who are new to this is our big hat fact for today. Yeah, we're on. Hannibal says, are we on? I said we're on. I mean business. In the past 18 months, in similar scenes, we have seen military leaders who have toppled the governments of Mali, Chad, Guinea, Sudan, and now Burkina Faso. West African leaders last week Friday called an emergency summit on the situation in Burkina Faso, where the new leader, Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Damiba, told the nation in his first public address that he will return the country to constitutional rule when the conditions are right. The resurgence of coups has alarmed the region's remaining civilian leaders, and Ghana's president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, says it represents a threat to peace, security, and stability in West Africa. It's been a fluid situation, and in the past 48 hours, I've seen many things happen. I was listening to the Ghanaian foreign minister, who is the envoy in this, Shirley Botchway, and she said that they had conversations, and first of all, they had gone to see the president of Burkina Faso, ousted president now, Makabore, and he's in good health, but won't disclose to journalists what exactly happened. But they will have a clear idea of where the sub-regional bloc is headed on Thursday, when the heads of government of the West African sub-region meet to decide on the fate of Burkina Faso. But this is troubling. Hannibal Owaifo, I've seen your press statement, and because of your virtue of your position, and having worked on the foreign desk for several years, I've had to liaise with Hannibal, whether it was in the Gambia, where Yahya Jammeh was refusing to hand over, and we had Adama Barrow step in, and thankfully Nigeria had played a key role in that one. And I was just telling the audience, Hannibal, 20 years of the African Union, when we should be celebrating what democracy is. Once again, another coup. Interesting, last time I spoke with you, it was about a coup. Now, within weeks, we have another coup in Burkina Faso.
Well, thank you very much. Glad to join the discussion.
Right.
I just came back from Liberia, and I had, during the swearing ceremony of the new executive of the Liberian Bar, I had cause to raise the issue.
Right.
And I also had cause to raise the issue too with some other very important personalities within within Liberia,
Right.
including foreign envoys and all that during that event.
Right.
If you listen to our press statements from Sudan to President Burkina Faso, all the way from Guinea, Mali, and all that, the rhetorics of the African leaders is a source of worry. Why did I say so? Last year in Niamey during our annual conference, the theme of the conference was accountable governance as a panacea to unending conflicts in Africa.
Right.
You do not get peace by wishing it. You do not make progress by legislating it. You play by the rule. Like President Chikwera, Lazarus Chikwera of Malawi will say, incidentally, the 2022 annual conference is in Malawi.
Right.
If you do not follow the law will follow you. And so that is where we are. When we have citizens of our region that are largely uneducated in terms of their rights, their obligations to states, when government refuses to perform its roles, primary roles of the welfare of the citizens, by having large scale, by opening up the policy for large scale business, employment of youths, when government is unable to take care of the security of its citizens, when government is immersed in one scandal or the other, when politics is continue to be played beyond the level of decency and honesty, when we begin to talk about cabal and cabals, when people continue to change the constitution to put themselves or perpetuate themselves in power, when we continue to ordain people who we know are criminals and crooks, but who are our surrogates, when we continue to do all these things, you cannot get stability and peace. It's all going to lead to conflict. How did we arrive at the situations unfolding in Mali, Guinea, and et al.? First of all, they all have breakdown of security. On so many occasions, we had cause to advise President Alpha Conde that his journey to changing the constitution and the rigging of elections in Guinea was getting to the heat. But as usual, politicians are on top. They have the security with them. They have everything with them. And so they don't look back. But incidentally, like we said in our press statement, it is the civilians who it is the government, those who are in government, that are taking the dare risk of plunging their country or their countries into this crisis. Because when the military strikes, for instance, President Kabore is the first casualty, and all the other people around him are the casualties. The same thing in Guinea, the same thing in Mali. You have to go all around crying for the African leaders, begging for their former colleagues to be released. In the process, they can be killed. And all these things that are happening now, we have not seen the end of it because we are going to have counter coups.
Absolutely, which is like what we saw in Mali. By the way, if you're just joining in, Hannibal Wife is the president of the African Bar Association, and this has been streamed live on Facebook as well as on YouTube. So if you've got questions, comments, we'll have them up shortly, and you can also send us messages on WhatsApp. The number on WhatsApp is 0809 597 5805. Again, 0809 597 5805. This is a very important conversation. I know some people will be saying, you're talking about Mali and Burkina Faso, but we know what happened in the years in the 80s, how this relay of coups and counter coups, and what damage it did to us, especially in the West African sub-region, and was responsible for many of the wars that did sap the democratic credentials, which we're even dealing with up till today. The consequences we haven't even seen the end of, which is why we're taking particular concern. And the many issues which unite Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Chad, interestingly also, I'm sure you will tell us later, have symptoms in Nigeria also too, if not even full-blooded crisis. Something I want you to help us understand. Just before I came in, I've seen pictures of videos of people jubilating in Ouagadougou, the Burkina Faso capital, in Mali, jubilating, things like even the expulsion of the French ambassador and all of those things. There appears to be some romanticizing with military rule. Sadly, if we open the phone lines, you'll be amazed at what Nigerians are even saying. What happened, Hannibal?
Well, I've given you the basis.
Right.
And the basics. Nothing happened. The citizens are tired. In Nigeria, for instance, during the meeting of the South professionals, I spoke to the government. And I said, look, you must be dreaming. If you believe that you have done well, you must be dreaming. Because this country is worse than where we were before. So, how could you, in your right senses, say you have done well? People are dying daily, being killed up north, south, east, west. The poverty rate has increased. Unemployment can't even be rated anymore. It's beyond control. Inflation is damning. So anything happens, the people jubilate. The people just simply jubilate because it represents a new lease, a new beginning. Every day, you wake up in the morning, you see something new, it's a new day.
Right.
So for people, they are simply tired. I hear people saying a military coup is not going to happen in Nigeria. No. Well, that's what we pray for. And I do not think our military officers are ambitious as to embark on that retrogressive journey. But unfortunately and sadly, anything can happen because the tension is too much. Our politicians in Nigeria have played beyond any reasonable limit. The crisis that brought about the banditry, about the terrorists, are squarely in the hands of the politicians. It's not anybody else. And those they are appointed to man the borders. So, and then you send military officers to the place to go and die and die and die and die. How long are you going to sustain this?
How long? I mean,
it's preposterous. So at the end of the day, when you say people jubilate, well, we might see some form of what you call it. You can call it illiteracy in it, but fundamentally, people are just happy to see a new lease of life. The destruction of lives and property in Burkina Faso has been enormous. It has led to enormous strain. People have died. In Nigeria, we can't even count. We don't even know whether Rwanda genocide is even not much better than Nigeria today. Let's be honest.
Let's take this quick break. We come back and we can talk some more on the big hard facts, how military coups are threatening the credentials of democracy in the continent 20 years after the formation of the African Union, and we're asking ourselves real deep questions. So 99.3 Nigeria Info.
For the best talk.
So your state governor is said to have ordered immediate employment of 5,000 youths. Don't we need more of these to come from different governments?
Stay with Nigeria Info.
Do you think that maybe those food items just came like that, decayed already? I mean, what is really the truth?
I try to be careful not to use the word hoarding because I do not have facts that points at that.
Your number one station for talk. 99.3. Let's talk.
Join the conversation no matter where you are. Download our mobile app by searching Nigeria Info FM on the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. Also, get news updates in sports, entertainment, news, and current affairs right on the app. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
Welcome back to Hard Facts with Sandra Ezekwesili.
All right, welcome back. 99.3 Nigeria Info. And big discussion here we're having with Hannibal Owaifo, President of the African Bar Association. And so many things going on in the West African sub-region that has left us with deep concerns about how on earth are we going to get out of this one. There's the poverty to deal with. There's the jihadist movement, which is causing problems all the way from Bamako all the way to northeastern Nigeria. The entire Sahel is now being referred to some governed spaces where all of these criminals and terrorist gangs have reigned anarchy in many of those spaces. Hannibal, I know because you're a man who's very pragmatic, and many of these things, oftentimes you're you're just from Liberia, and you're speaking with the president, George Weah, and all of the members of the West African sub-region, all the way to Southern Africa, where you have the leaders also there, and you probably want to find a way out of it. You've also had strong words for the military. Interestingly, you're supposed to have a conference, where you're going to have the top hierarchy of the continent gathered here. I'm not sure you probably have the hierarchy of Burkina Faso invited anymore. Because of all of the recent things happening, they obviously need some talking to also too, because it appears they were invited to do a job and got overwhelmed doing the job and have now decided to seize power. It doesn't exactly make it right, and it doesn't put them in the best position also too, because in the real sense they don't also have solutions to the problems.
Correct.
Yes.
So you're correct. Agogo, they have no solution to the problems. We've seen that in the past.
Yeah.
In Nigeria, it was a disaster. In Ghana, it was a disaster, except for Jerry Rawlings' flashpoints here and there. But we also saw the consequences of it that's still on in Ghana today. All over the place, name it. It's never worked, and it will never work. But the problem is, where do we go from here? We're in a quagmire. Politicians are not ready to learn. The military often are terrorized to the level, let me use the word, that they now decide, okay, like you rightly said, this war is keep coming. And the thing that really bothers us is that the government of this country and the government of our countries in the extended West African sub-region does not understand that all these things have their dynamics. It's like you drive a car without petrol or without and all that. At the point in time, it has to give way. Something has to give way. This country has been, Nigeria, for instance, is overheated. It's boiling, everywhere is boiling. Ritualists, unemployment, hunger, all sorts of things. Politicians lying every day and displaying affluent behavior. Those who we expect to be the fathers of the nation, fighting themselves to continue to remain in power. For God's sake. I will be tired of this confusion and this type of thing. And these are what leads to all these incursions into politics by the military. Unfortunately, it is illegal and unconstitutional, but they make it so. Okay, the West African leaders who keep on making worthless statements here and there, they have gone to Burkina Faso. Have they been able to remove the military leader there? They have not been able to do so. How many years now they've not been able to remove Mali? They've not been able to do anything in Sudan. They've not been able. So we're just making endless statements instead of us to sit down.
Right. So what you say about the instrument? I mean, they've imposed sanctions, for example. The people in Mali don't think those sanctions amount to anything. And
of course,
it's pitted ECOWAS against the people.
Exactly.
But those sanctions were meant to help people.
Well, the sanctions were only meant to retain the powers that be. Were meant to restore them back to power in what we call democratic rule, which is actually autocratic in their behavior. Politicians don't care about those who they claim to represent. Look at what is going on in the southeast of Nigeria. You'll be amazed. That the people, they are very hostile to government. Why are they so? Why is it so? Because government has no bearing to their lives. What about the people of the South? For decades we've been crying. The whole country has been crying. Let us change our system in such a way that it works for everyone. But the politicians will not agree. They will employ ethnic sentiments. They will employ religious sentiments. They will employ all kinds of crooked ways to retain this status quo. And at the point in time, the system gives way. So these are the problems that almost all the West African regions, all the West African regions are facing. Look at in Uganda now, for instance. Right. How many years as president, what's his name? Being in power. Opposition people are there. Those who are in opposition have been arrested. They are put in jail. I'm not saying maybe doing well, but the problem is change is always a pressure for everyone. When they wake up a new day, today's election we go just like we're going in 2023. Even though there will be elections, but we are not seeing yet any sign of change. I'm talking as a Nigerian. So talking broadly as an African,
Right.
and as president of African Bar Association, like our statement said about Burkina Faso, we are finding it increasingly difficult to defend African governments because of their undemocratic tendencies and their love of violations of the rule of law. So the only path to peace and prosperity in Africa, we said so from 2016, is Zimbabwe. When I entered as president at my first conference in Harare,
Right.
was that the rule of law is the only pathway to success in Africa. So we must obey our laws. We must, ensure that we protect them with all our might and right. We must ensure that we see the people as our masters, not as subjects. We must see them as those who are our employers, not those who we rule over. But in Africa, especially in Nigeria, these people lord it over people. They are not interested in their welfare. Otherwise, the poverty rate in this country today, despite our resources, despite all what we have, will not be like this today. Ritualists will not be everywhere.
Right.
What is leading to Yahoo that has given Nigeria a bad name? And the leaders are not even bothered. What has brought us to prostitution all over across the Mediterranean and in Europe? The leaders don't care.
Right. So, Hannibal, we're going to go on a break shortly. But when we come back, I'm going to ask you questions around the role of the international community. People have viewed them maybe as meddlesome interlopers here. Others have said that they're useful, especially the role of France in what is going on in the fight against Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, and ISWAP in the Sahel. But appears now that picnic they had, especially Francophone Africa, has been threatened. You have ambassadors being told to pack their bags and leave Mali, for instance. There's a lot of anger also too in Burkina Faso. We'll talk about this right after this break. On 99.3 Nigeria Info, military coups threatening the democratic credentials of a continent. What do we do about it? Please stay with us on 99.3 Nigeria Info.
Live your best life now. Switch to Leadway Pension PFA. Enjoy our competitive return, top-class customer experience, prompt payment, and the peace of mind that comes with a trusted Leadway brand. Leadway Pension PFA. Your future, our passion.
At AIO Prep Academy, we understand the value that an elite academic education can bring to a child and their family. That's why we are seeking partnerships with community leaders, as well as foundation, philanthropists, church, and mosque leadership to offer sponsorship to underprivileged students. In addition to excellent academic curriculum, sponsored AIO Prep Academy students will receive brand new laptop computers, and each sponsored household
to 1 million naira. Go to www.nigeriainfo.fm to find out how to audition. Auditions close on the 15th of February 2022. For information about partnership and sponsorship, please call us on 0703 498 4352.
We're back.
We're back.
We're back.
We're back.
We are back.
We're back on 99.3 Nigeria Info.
Oh boy, welcome back. It's 5:30, and how time flies when you're having a big discussion. 99.3 Nigeria Info and military coups threaten the continent's democracy. Michael Essiet on Facebook, I see you, says, is there really a democracy in Africa? Lucky, Lyseti Otuya says, if there was a democracy, there wouldn't be coup. I think the Bright Okparacha says, I think the political leaders in Africa have failed in all ramifications, and the reoccurrence of these coups is a result of these failures. I tell you, Nigeria just might be going down that line. The current situation doesn't improve. People are yearning for real change. The only time we enjoy democracy in Nigeria is when what happened in Ghana happened. And the messages go on and on. People really concerned about the real quality of the democratic experience we're having. Send us messages to on WhatsApp 0809597585. Hannibal Uwaifo, President Africa Bar Association, still here with us. So these are troubling times, and they say tough times require tough solutions in thinking out this whole thing. It appears, Hannibal, I remember the delight when many of the countries that had been ruled by the military, especially West African countries, they dropped the jackboots, they dropped the berets, they wore the agbadas and the suit, even though some of them may have been in the military uniform. They just, switched over and became civilians, but they had to go through the electoral process, like Jerry Rawlings also, I remember, in Ghana. And then having had the opportunity to go to many of these African countries and see the electoral process happen, I'm sure you've also seen in observer status, it appeared that we have gotten a hold over the democratic experience because we're able to conduct elections and governments were able to transit 4 years, 5 years, depending on the tenure limitations for those governments. Was it wrong in thinking that the electoral process was a legitimate credential for democracy?
Thank you. Well, the electoral process is not the only yardstick for measuring democracy. Electoral process is just a vehicle for, transporting or perfecting the democratic status. Yeah. You can have a monarchy that's democratic. It all depends on what you look at. It, if you read the old Benin empire, there was said to be democracy there. So other kingdoms, of the past. So it's not just only about elections. Right. It's about governance. It's about the rule of law. When there's democracy, it's supposed to be an avenue for mass participation in the affairs of each nation, and it's supposed to be obedience and adherence to the Constitution, right, and to the rule of law. It's supposed to bring about development, of the people. It has to do with the welfare of the people, mass welfare. It has to be with the happiness of the people. So when you go elect leaders, no matter how clean the election is, right, but they are fraudulent in their activities, they are cabalistic, they are nepolistic, and then they do appointments, in a way that suits them or their ethnic tribes or their religion. And then when they go about, corrupt practices, collecting 10% in Nigeria, here is now 60%. That's gone that bad. So you can't claim that you're in a democracy simply because you conducted a free and fair election. So electoral malpractices adds to the confusion of democracy. You may also at times have flawed electoral process, right, that brings about a situation, where real change comes. Take, for instance, in Singapore. Singapore was a liberal dictatorship, but it was able to bring the people, to the high point of development, to the level that Singapore is one of the most developed countries in the world today, and is a place for world commerce, is a place for arbitration, is a place for interchange, is a place for special business interplay. But whereas in other places where they claim to be to be exchanging government from time to time, the thing is not as good as that. So my view is, if you look at the antecedents, like here we saw General Olusegun Obasanjo transmute to Chief Olusegun Obasanjo.
Right.
We've also seen so many military leaders, who were hitherto governors becoming Senate president and all that. These are just symptoms of the weakness of the society. These are just symptoms of a dirty society, a society driven by greed and by irrelevancies, a society not driven by developmental agenda. When people just go, this was a former military governor in Bendel State.
Right.
He enters his town, he's looked upon as a king.
Right.
He has nothing upstairs. He doesn't possess any credential that enables him to run the government or to represent the people. He's not a Democrat. He has not studied any such thing. And you put it in his hands, he goes to the place and he is able to push for a little bit, and then he caves in.
Right. And something, Hannibal, as I think about this analogy and I see just exactly like a pack of cards.
Yes.
It's been arranged many times for many democratic systems in the continent. Like, they've been set up to fail. African Union, then the REC, ECOWAS, EAC, COMESA, SADC, all of those groups that have been put up, to help the vision of the African Union stand up, is now being looked at. Do you say that they have earned the respect to say they've earned the respect to say we can demand for ourselves what our destiny should be without the interference of the West? I say this because people point to what happened to Muammar Gaddafi. The African Union said we're going to do this. They put out a plane, I remember Jacob Zuma, to get Gaddafi out, but it didn't take NATO, a second before those air raids happened. The rest, they say, is history. The mess Libya is today, you can trace to the entire Sahel, the problems we are facing. And you say that it's misplaced aggression for people to look at the West when Mali, for example, called on the French to save them from the Islamist militants. They were going to take Bamako in hours, and it helped them. Now the entire Francophone Africa and maybe some part of the Anglophone are also looking with derision at the West. You think it's misplaced aggression, or you think they deserve what they're getting?
Well, it's misgrill. For me,
right,
it's misgrill. I also believe that the failure of the West and the failure of the colonial masters to be true to what they agreed to, and to be true to the tenets of what happened in their country, is also partly responsible for the woes. Its sincerity is also there, and they are not willing to take it, to the point, to which they are also ready to pay the sacrifice. Take, for instance, we've been discussing Libya. The entire problem here, like you rightly said, flowed out of Libya. Libya was a safe country. It was a prosperous country. For God's sake, what were the West doing there? The same thing they went to do in Iraq, the same thing they did in Syria. It happened here, and it's problematic. We're lucky that the Russians were able to pull into Syria, and so they were able to sort it out of some sort. So I would not agree that the way to deal with this problem is to say the French ambassador you are hereby expelled. That's infantile. And that's very true of military rule. The military has no finesse about diplomacy. And that doesn't work. You don't live in isolation. How do you move out? How do you move about the economic activities?
Right.
You want your country to be seized. You want your country to be closed. For God's sake, you don't trade with yourselves. You trade with other nations. How do you want to plant something in Mali and repeat there and sleep there? How are the people going? You don't want the people to go out. You don't want to go anywhere. Come on, this is one of the problems that we are talking about military rule. And the beginning of the catastrophe has just started.
Right.
After doing this and doing this and doing this for a while, a separate group will come and say, no, we can't continue like this. And they'll strike. And the Makeba down continues. And that's the reason why we said, no matter how bad it is, if the military wants to participate as a constituency in the affairs of their country, they should mobilize the civilians.
Absolutely.
They should mobilize the civilians and stand behind one of them who they know is credible, and then get them to win. That will be perfectly legitimate. I do not share the idea that the military cannot say anything in their country. No, the military have a say. They have a right to vote. Nothing in any law and in any part of the world stops the military from voting. What it stops them from doing is seizing power by force.
Absolutely.
So I believe the military should be allowed to play their role, not in a partisan way of belonging to parties or belonging to groups, but they have a right to mobilize their citizens considering the fact that they are well organized. They have a right to mobilize citizens to a particular direction, in order to ensure that the country is saved and to save them from this embarrassment of taking power illegally, which might also cost them their lives, which might also, at the end of the day, if we are to follow the Malabar Protocol, send them to prison. And that brings me to the Malabar Protocol. Why there's a protocol set down by leaders, which makes it a crime even after you have left office, especially in this type of era. How many African leaders have signed the Malabar Protocol? Here is the faux pas. So I don't think that we are serious about democracy. I think the most of the people we have are crooks who are not prepared to sacrifice anything for their country other than to lick their country dry, to put themselves in high places and to lord it over the people. Unfortunately, that doesn't last, as we have seen the recent developments.
Right, which is why I love to speak with you, Hannibal, because you're frank, blunt, and you say exactly how it is. What would you say the role of the African Bar Association is in times like this? I can't imagine the sort of pressure you're going to have to deal with. You have to meet with these leaders now and again and tell them exactly how it is.
Well, if it were possible to be meeting with them, we would have loved to, but fortunately, just once in a while we have time to meet with them or meet with their foreign ministers and the attorneys general and all that. Everybody in Africa, or especially in West Africa, behaves like a lord, especially when you are in political appointments. And these are the things we say should stop. Even in professions where you become president of the you now see yourself as somebody who are riding in big cars, behaving yourself as if you are now above your professionals. All these things should stop, and it's what is giving us problem. For us in the African Bar, we have been in the African Bar Association. We have what we call the military, the armed forces and security agencies section. It's one of the strongest committees of the African Bar, and from time to time, they've been talking about their problems. In the army, it was explosive. People spoke a lot about the problems the military is facing. Why civilian authorities should come to their aid. We are also able to tell the ICC that, look, come on, you cannot claim you want to come and investigate Nigerian soldiers, because we are not going to support that. We are going to back the Nigerian armed forces, because you will need, as an international criminal court, to go and look for those who are the jihadists, who are their sponsors, and those who are killing our people and raping women and kidnapping and collecting ransom, rather than trying to investigate the legitimate armed forces. We're able to do that to their defense. But by and large, most of these talk shops we have with the armed forces were actually meant, to cool tempers and to allow them, to allow us hear from them firsthand what the problems are and what solutions are likely to be. And that is one of the reasons why we're very grateful to the Chief of Defense Staff, General Lucky Rabo, who is collaborating with the African Bar to organize the first maiden military law conference, which is going to hold in Abuja sometime in May. We want to thank the Chief of Army Staff, the Chief of Navy, the Chief of Air Force. They've been able to put all these things together with us for the entire African continent to educate them. You cannot say that these gentlemen haven't tried, they've not done their best in teaming up with civilians to do a military law conference, to laugh and over so they can make their inputs and also hear from the other side. That's the best they can do. But when civilians do not listen to recommendations from things of that nature, the consequences are devastating. So yes, we will use the opportunity to appeal again to the military juntas in those countries. We will also use the opportunity to appeal to our leaders who are going to be present to also help talk to them, to lay down their arms and restore legitimate governments. But unfortunately, where do we go after that? The civilian leaders go back as if nothing have happened. until another thing happens again. Unfortunately, that is the barber's chair that we find, the game of musical chairs that we find in Africa, particularly the West African sub-region.
Particularly West African sub-region, and worse off even the Central Africa sub-region, where you have, I was telling someone, if you combine the years of people like Paul Biya, Mbasogo, Nguema, Sassou Nguesso, you're looking at hundreds of years. That's the democracy. The so-called dividends of democracy. We have Hannibal Uwaifo here, and I'm going to open the phone line so that if you've got questions or you want to comment on any of this issue, you got just a minute so that we can take in as many people as possible. The number to call, 0700 993 993 993. Again, 0700 993 993 993. And then female only line, 01465 7190. Again, 01465 7190. So let's do this as quickly as possible. Hello and good evening. Hello and good evening.
Comrade Ikechukwu.
All right, Comrade Ikechukwu, go ahead quickly.
I greet my son. Ogame, God bless you. You have said it all. Look at what's happening in Nigeria now. Insecurity.
Right.
Release the Boko Haram. They don't want to release. They are building a way from Katsina to Niger. That's what it is enough to overthrow Buhari. But our lawmakers are not doing anything. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Comrade Ikechukwu. Hello and good evening. Sure about that. Keep the calls coming in. Hello and good evening. Hello and good evening.
Good evening.
All right. Please kindly turn off the device you're listening with.
Yes.
Good.
Can you hear me now?
We hear you clearly. Please go ahead.
Yes. Please, I would like to remain anonymous because when you're asking people to tell you their names as they contribute to the political process, our environment is very, very poisonous, and I think people will not be comfortable to do that. Now, in terms of leadership, it should appear as if they have never seen the four walls of schools before. We were all crying during the military era, and we thought that a civilian government to come in, and all of us will behave the best way we can to develop a new nation. But alas, as soon as people came in, they even look for guns. In the past, in military government, you are afraid of guns. In civilian government now, you are afraid of both guns and ritual killings. And we seem to be going to nowhere. And if you take statistics now, majority of Nigerians will tell you that they are better off in a military government than a civilian government where nobody have rights to life and the right to live in any longer. No opposition. There is no way anybody can give any approval to democratic rule in the country where life of people seems to be cheaper than killing a chicken.
All right. Thank you very much, Anonymous. I'm wondering why you went anonymous. You're just talking general things that are of great concern to all of us, and I think you should be able to say it boldly. Hello and good evening.
Is it Mr. Chukwuda and Mr. Alhobo?
Great. What's your name, please?
Okay, my name is Mr. Azubike. I'm calling from Radio Shodi.
All right, Azubike. Go ahead, please.
Thank you for having me. The last caller have just spoke to my mind what I want to just say this evening. But what I'd like to add in this conversation is all about this insecurity and other things that is happening in our domain. If that is something that our military can use this opportunity to overthrow this civilian government that we are into now, I will be so much happy.
I'm going to cut you off there because you cannot make those sort of
comments.
You can't make all those sort of comments. And we just did this to have an idea of how the people are frustrated and thinking. It's a question I was going to ask you, Hannibal, which I think is very important in this democratic journey and experience and lesson, where people are allowed to repeat the class if they're not. It appears all the components of what makes democratic experience work hasn't happened for us yet, especially with the people in how they take ownership of the process is what it appears to me. The other day we talked about the International Day of Democracy. The worst level is the authoritarian or military rule where we have, been for several years before the first stage. Many African countries are on the first stage. Why is it difficult for people to aspire to the next stage where they begin to enjoy some of the dividends of democracy than to go back downwards?
Well, what I have seen, most of the time my mouth cannot even, particularly traveling across the African continent, the terrain of Africa. You know, not minding that it may be easier for you to travel to London than to go to Freetown, which is just in West Africa, or go to the Gambia, which is further down, or even Niger.
Right.
You know, during our last conference, to go to Niger by air costs as much as almost $500,000. You know, so you can understand the poverty and the dire situation we are in. Now you will ask yourself some questions. In this situation, what has stopped the West African from having an airline, you know, that will boost trade across the borders? But instead of that, what you see, we even have, despite our so-called ECOWAS unity, we even have, countries expelling them, closing people's shops and all that. So the problem we have is that we are too quick to running, structures that doesn't even suit us, that has not been well thought out. Unity is good. In Nigeria, what are we saying? For instance, for us in the African bar, just like what you said just now, I continue to insist as a person that the indivisibility of this country is unquestionable. We don't even discuss that. In the Southeast Hausa professional where I also lead, the unity of Nigeria is not discussable. We must be united.
Right.
But having said that, is it not good for us to sit down and adopt a structure that best represents and suits everybody? Why do we continue to? I remember that there was a time in this country people used to drive Citroen, or they used to drive 505.
Very true.
You know, but those things don't exist anymore. So why can't we also sit down and redraw our structure in such a way that, you know, things begin to flow far better than creation of states was something that was, you know, in vogue during the military era. Yeah. You know, but now creating states is even going to deplete your resources even more. You are going to create so many administrative units, and it makes the people poorer. There are some states today in Nigeria that cannot even pay worker salary. There are some states that do not have anything, but they are states, and it's a burden on the entire community. Whereas those states and those areas would have been better, you know, if they have harnessed the resources at their disposal and put to a national grid, rather than pulling them and making everybody an equal partner in a contest that is totally inequitable.
So you think the constitutional review going on presently by the National Assembly, you believe it can happen, or you think that
it can't happen that way because it is self-serving. You cannot run. Number one, we need to be very practical. Today, the way and manner representatives are chosen into the National Assembly, whether Senate or the House of Representatives, does not adequately represent the people, the constituency where they come from. They just call those things by name. But how many people know them? How many people are able to reach them? What are they doing in their constituency? So it is not about sitting down in the National Assembly and doing a self-serving. A constitution that will last for Nigeria is a constitution where the component ethnic groups in the entire country will be called, where the different professional groups will be called, where the different, even if the different religious group will be called. And together everybody will make their own part, and then we're able to arrive at a just solution for everyone, that will work for everyone, and that will work for Nigeria.
There's never enough time to end these conversations, but we're going to have to put a lead on this one until another time. And I hope we can have that discussion. Hannibal Owifo, the President, African Bar Association. Maybe then will be the constitution, and we can see whether the wager we placed on it may just surprise us. We never can say never. But thank you very much, Hannibal Owifo, and for the great work you're doing with the African Bar. We'll keep watching and keeping tabs with you,
too,
and in supporting also too. We are going to
Thank you very much.
Yes, it's the end of the show today for Hard Fact. We're back tomorrow, but the news comes up at 6, and then good friend Rufai Hosseini will be in with conversations with Rufai, and that's right after the news. 99.3 Nigeria Info. Let's talk.
99.3 Nigeria Info. We are more than just radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at Nigeria Info FM. Check us out on Facebook at Nigeria Info 99.3. Follow us on Twitter at Nigeria Info FM and on Instagram at Nigeria Info FM Lagos for live updates as it happens. 99.3 Nigeria Info.